Continuing ahead with kinetic theory of gases today. Last lecture we had discussed the basic derivations from the assumptions of the kinetic model of an ideal gas, and we had reached up to the point where we had just started looking at the concept of degrees of freedom and equipartition of energy, uh, after having derived the relationship between RMS speed and the macroscopic properties of the gas like pressure, volume, temperature, etc. So let's take it from that point onwards today. This is heat and thermodynamics, session number 7 for us. So I'll begin with a quick recap of the derivations that we've done from kinetic theory of gases last time. Okay. So by applying the basic assumptions of the kinetic model, like the fact that there is no intermolecular attractive force between gas molecules, and all collisions are perfectly elastic, and the motion of gas molecules is perfectly random, or it is what we call the Brownian motion, which has the property of being perfectly random. So we had seen, based on those properties and some application of collision theory, etc., uh, we first of all saw the relationship of RMS speed with respect to pressure, volume, etc. So that was this, or square root of 3 PV divided by number of moles into molar mass, whichever way we express it. Okay. Or we can also express this as square root of 3P divided by rho, where rho is the density. It is the total mass divided by volume, which we can express as this quantity or this quantity, right? So this was the first important formula. Then we saw the kinetic interpretation of temperature. So we saw half m Vrms square is proportional to temperature. So by applying this, we got the relation that PV is equal to capital NKT, or PV is equal to nRT, which is our universal gas equation, or the ideal gas equation, where R is the universal gas constant equal to 8.314 joules per mole Kelvin. Okay, then next up we had seen substituting PV in terms of temperature again in the RMS equation. So we got Vrms in terms of temperature as square root of 3RT by capital M, or square root of 3KT by small m. And from this, we also got that the translational kinetic energy, the average translational kinetic energy per molecule becomes 3 by 2 kT. So this one was the average translational kinetic energy per molecule. Okay, so just make sure you take a look at these equations and you're familiar with them. Okay, we will look at some further applications of these. All right, so let's begin with a typical type of question where we can see some of these concepts being applied. So we have two heat insulated gas containers, but also this time let's assume they are connected by some kind of a pipeline like this. With a stopper in between. So A and B are heat insulated gas chambers with a connecting pipe. Initially, A and B are filled with helium and argon with the stopper closed such that the pressure of the helium in container A is 1 atmosphere, volume of container A is 4 liters, and the temperature of the gas in container A is 127 degrees C, whereas the pressure of the gas in container B is 2 atmospheres, volume is 3 liters, and the temperature is 27 degrees C. So now the stopper is opened and the non-reactive gases, because they're both noble gases, mix. So finally, at equilibrium state, when they finish mixing up, what is the pressure and temperature for the mixture? Okay, so just try this out, people. So first of all, think and tell me what concepts you can apply over here. To find the final pressure and temperature, you'll have to generate some equations. So for that, you need some concepts. Okay, so first of all, what we have to understand here is that the total number of moles will be conserved. Okay, so initially, when the stopper is closed, okay, for helium in the container A, okay, so the 1 into 4 in liter atmospheres is equal to, on the other side, some unknown number of moles into this temperature we'll have to convert. So this will become 400 Kelvin, this will become 300 Kelvin. And for argon gas in container B, so we have 2 atmospheres into 3 liter atmosphere is NBR into that temperature, which is 300 Kelvin. This is equation 2. Okay. Finally, with the stopper opened, okay, for the mixture of helium and argon, okay, the total volume is VA plus VD, the mixture. I mean, it will become a combined container of 7-liter volume. The pressure we don't know. Okay. The number of moles will be Na plus Nb. Okay. And the temperature we don't know. So we have the equation that PV is equal to nRT. So this will become some unknown pressure into 7 liters in liter atmosphere will be equal to Na plus Nb into RT, where temperature we don't know. So this is our third equation. Okay. So comparing these three equations, we will get one relation here. We'll get 7P. Now Na from here we can substitute as 4 upon 400 R, and Nb from here we can substitute as 6 by 300 R or 1 by 50 R. Okay. As long as we are using the same units, it's fine. This will become Na plus Nb will become 1 upon 100 R plus 1 upon 50 R into RT. So we get one relation that 7P is equal to 3 by 100 T. And now we need to generate one more equation to find the value of P and T separately. So note this down and think carefully how we get one more equation. So the hint to you is that the total kinetic energy of the molecules will remain conserved. The kinetic energy of the molecules in container A plus the kinetic energy of the molecules in container B should be equal to the final kinetic energy of all the molecules in the mixture in the combined container A plus B. That sort of conservation of kinetic energy will give you another equation. Okay, so let's see how we can get another equation by conserving the total energy of the gas molecules, that is the total kinetic energy. And why that should be conserved is because, see, what is happening when you open the stopper. Okay, the helium and argon are going to mix, but when they mix, again, all collisions between molecules are perfectly elastic. So there's no loss of kinetic energy. And we are not supplying any heat or doing any mechanical work on the system through any external agent, because the walls of the container are insulated walls. So there is no heat exchange with the surrounding, and there's no mechanical energy being exchanged because there's no work done, etc. So that's why the total kinetic energy of the gas molecules should remain conserved. So the second thing is that the total kinetic energy of helium molecules in container A plus argon in container B should be equal to the total kinetic energy of the molecules of the mixture in the final state. Okay. This was the initial state. So in container A, the average kinetic energy per molecule would be 3 by 2 times this. Okay. So this is average kinetic energy per molecule in container A. So the total kinetic energy in container A would be this. Similarly, the total kinetic energy of molecules in container B would be number of molecules into 3 by 2 kTb, and this would be this, right? Now remember that n into k is the same thing as small n into Avogadro's number, because okay, and R is equal to Avogadro's number times k. So from this we can say that this is equal to this, this is equal to, and this is equal to, which is equal to Na plus Nb times Rb. So there'll be a 3 by 2 term here. So from this we have this other relation, that so now this equation that we got by conserving the total kinetic energy, this has to be solved along with the earlier equations that we had. So I'll refer back to the earlier equations, try to use them. Okay, we had written equations of state, you will remember, PA, is equal to NA, RTA, and like that for B. So use those equations. Okay, so nobody has got the answer yet. Let's try to resolve this out. Okay, so now let's see how we will solve this equation. So actually, we'll be able to solve this last equation first to calculate the value of this temperature. So see, what we are given is that PAVA was NARTA. So from this, remember we had got Na as 1 by 100 R. Okay. And we had got NB similarly as 1 by 50 R. So you can make use of that. So now examining these two, we can see that Na is to Nb is 1 is to 2. Nb is double of Na. Okay. So we can substitute this fact. Now substitute that over here. Substitute the fact that Nb is twice of Na. Okay. And of course, Ta was 400 Kelvin and Tb was 300 Kelvin, right? These were the values. Yeah. So substitute this here. Okay. So we have Na into 300, Na into 400, Ta is 400, plus Nb, which we will substitute as twice of Na into temperature of B, which is 300. This should be equal to sum of Na and Nb, which will become Na plus 2 times Na into the unknown temperature. So as you can see, we'll get the value of unknown temperature. So 400 plus 600 is equal to 3 times T. So the final temperature will be 1000 by 3 or 333.33 Kelvin, or we can also substitute this as that minus 273. So that will give us how much? 33 minus 27 will give us okay, so 60.33 degrees C. This will be the final temperature. Okay. So this is in Kelvin. And then we'll go back to that equation to find the final pressure. So we'll substitute in this equation. So that equation was 7P is equal to 3 by 100 T. So 7P was equal to 3 by 100 T, but this is in Kelvins, remember. So P will be 3 by 700 into 1000 by 3. That's how we'll substitute. Okay. So pressure becomes how much? 10 by 7, I believe, right? Atmospheres. Or the final pressure becomes 1.43 atmospheres. So this is the final pressure and this is the final temperature. So this type of question is very important throughout thermodynamics, where you're using conservation principles, and once you understand which are the quantities to conserve, you're making use of the ideal gas equation PV equal to nRT, the equation of state, and of course the expression for kinetic energy of gas molecules. So I'll just take you through this whole thing once more. Okay. Go through it carefully and let me know if there are any doubts. So let's start with the question once more. Okay, so as you can see, we have used equation of state and conserve the number of moles. Okay, so this is our first equation actually, that conservation of number of moles, that N is equal to Na plus Nb. This equation here, this has been used here. So this is conservation of total number of moles. Okay. And then further down, we have used conservation of total kinetic energy of gas molecules. Okay, so finally, conservation of kinetic energy, total kinetic energy, directly gives us the value of the final temperature. And then we substitute that value of final temperature in the earlier equation for conservation of total number of moles, and that gives us the pressure. That's how we know the final state, the pressure and temperature. Okay, so hope this question is fully clear. If anybody has a doubt, just let me know. Now let's move ahead. So next we move on to very essential application of kinetic theory of gases, called the concept of the law of equipartition of energy and degrees of freedom. So before that, quickly, if we just recall the aspect of Brownian motion that we had understood last time. So from the analysis of the perfectly random or what is called Brownian motion of gas molecules, we had seen that Bx squares average is equal to Vy squares average is equal to Vz squares average equal to Vrms square by 3. Okay. For three-dimensional translational motion. So therefore, we can see that half m Vx squares average is equal to half m Vy squares average is equal to half m Vz squares average, which becomes one third of half m Vrms square. So that becomes one third of 3 by 2 kT. So this becomes 1 by 2 kT. Okay. So each of these quantities, they are called the average kinetic energy per molecule per degree of freedom. So I'll explain this term, degree of freedom, in just a moment. Okay. So this becomes 1 by 2 kT. So basically what we are saying is that if gas molecules are translating randomly and perfectly randomly at that in a three-dimensional space, so that means the velocity vectors can be resolved into three mutually perpendicular components. So any molecule's velocity vector has three mutually perpendicular components, Vx, Vy, and Vz. So are the three mutually perpendicular components of the velocity vector. So we say that therefore translational kinetic energy for any molecule, which is half mv square, can be written in terms of the components like this: half m into vx square plus vy square plus vz square. So the translational kinetic energy, we say, has 3 degrees of freedom, because you can divide it into three components which are mutually perpendicular. So each of these three components in the language of thermodynamics, they are called degrees of freedom. So there are 3 degrees of freedom. Okay. So that's why what we now say is that if we average out the kinetic energy, okay, so that is nothing but half m v RMS square. That is equal to half m Vx squares average plus Vy squares average plus Vz squares average. So this in turn tells us this, that the average kinetic energy per degree of freedom per molecule is this much. And this principle is called the law of equipartition of energy. It is a part of kinetic theory of gases, that the kinetic energy of gas molecules is equally partitioned between all the degrees of freedom. Hence the statement equipartition of energy. That means equally partitioned or equally divided between all degrees of freedom. So the average kinetic energy per molecule per degree of freedom comes out to be 1 by 2 kT, where K is the Boltzmann constant, R upon Avogadro's number. So this particular principle that we have written over here in the box bracket, that the average kinetic energy per molecule per degree of freedom is 1 by 2 kT. This is called the law of equipartition of energy. Please make a note of this first. Okay, so this is the law of equipartition of energy. Now, from this, we will learn about the different types of gas molecules and the different types of degrees of freedom that they have. So, let's look at degrees of freedom for different type of gases, or rather different type of gas molecules. So we now denote this with the symbol small f for thermodynamics. Okay. So the first type of gas we look at, as you know from chemistry, is monoatomic gases. Okay, or what we also call noble gases. Example: helium, argon, etc. Okay. So monoatomic gas molecules, they are the molecules are single point mass. Point mass or single particles in shape. The shape of such a molecule is that it's a single particle. Okay. So if it is a single particle, its moment of inertia about any axis x, y, or z will be tending to zero. So moment of inertia is equal to zero about any axis through it. Okay. Because moment of inertia, remember, is summation mr square. So r only is zero, no? Because just a single particle, so about its own axis. So therefore, rotational kinetic energy half I omega squared for such a molecule is zero. Okay. So basically what that means is that a monoatomic molecule does not store any rotational kinetic energy. A monoatomic gas molecule cannot have or store any rotational kinetic energy. It can only translate. So the net kinetic energy of the molecule is just the translational kinetic energy, which is half mv square. Okay. Now, this translational kinetic energy has 3 degrees of freedom. Okay, because of the 3 mutually perpendicular components. So, therefore, average kinetic energy per molecule is simply half m v RMS square. So that is 3 by 2 times 3 times half kT, because VRMS has 3 degrees of freedom. Okay. So in the case of a monoatomic gas, the average kinetic energy per molecule is 3 by 2 kT. Okay, and this is what we've been understanding till date from kinetic theory of gases. But next, when we graduate from monoatomic gas molecules to diatomic gas molecules and polyatomic gas molecules, we'll understand that there are some variations for this that are possible. But in the case of monoatomic gas molecules, which are single particles, the formula for the average kinetic energy per molecule only is 3 by 2 kT. Just make a note of this quickly so that we can move on to the more interesting case of the diatomic gas molecules. Okay, so hope this is clear and this is done. Now let's move on to diatomic gas molecules. Example, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, etc. So here the gas molecules are linear in shape, or we can also call them dumbbell shape, because basically it is two atoms joined together with a bond. Okay. So if we take the two perpendicular bisecting axes as our y-axis and z-axis, whereas we consider the axis of the molecule as our x-axis. We can see that for such a molecule, moment of inertia about x-axis is zero, but moment of inertia about y-axis is not zero. Moment of inertia about z-axis is not zero. In fact, if we consider two particles of mass m each, separated by a distance L, then the moment of inertia about an axis like this, just a moment people. Yeah, so if we consider such a molecule whose the distance between the two particles is L, okay, that I've already written here. So if we consider moment of inertia about this y-axis, because of rotation like this, okay, the moment of inertia about the y-axis will be 2 times m into L by 2 square. So it will be ml square by 2. So that's why you can see, and same about the z-axis. Okay, so moment of inertia about the y-axis is equal to moment of inertia about the z-axis, which is equal to I, suppose. Then such a molecule, its kinetic energy will be equal to kinetic energy of translation plus kinetic energy due to rotation. Because in general, such a molecule would have that kind of three-dimensional motion. It would be having a velocity plus it would be having some kind of a spin. Okay, so this would be half mv square plus half I omega square. So this would be the kinetic energy for a molecule like this. So now when we talk about average kinetic energy for diatomic gas molecules, average kinetic energy per molecule, that would be half mv squares average plus half I omega squares average. Now this omega squares average will be written as omega about y-axis, or rather we can write this half I omega squares average as half Iy omega y squares average plus half Iz omega z squares average. And similarly, half mv squares average is nothing but half m into RMS square, which is nothing but half m into Vx squares average plus Vy squares average plus Vz squares average. So you can see that the average translational kinetic energy has 3 degrees of freedom, whereas the average rotational kinetic energy has 2 degrees of freedom. So this term will have 3 degrees of freedom. This term will have 2 degrees of freedom. So therefore, the average kinetic energy per molecule, you can further write this as half m Vx squares average plus Vy squares average plus Vz squares average plus half I about y axis omega y squares average plus half I about z axis omega z squares average. So this is the rotational, this is the translational. So this whole term will be 3 by 2 kT. Okay, and this whole term will be kT because 3 degrees of freedom means 3 into half kT. Okay. And for this one, 2 degrees of freedom means 2 into half kT. So this will become 5 by 2 kT. So for diatomic molecules, the average kinetic energy per molecule is 5 by 2 kT. Okay. Or you can say that the average kinetic energy per molecule is half mv RMS square plus half I omega squares average. Now this term is 3 by 2 kT and this term is kT. So it becomes 5 by 2. Okay, so this is a very important concept that we'll carry forward into thermodynamics, first law of thermodynamics and applications also. So make sure you understood this and noted this down properly. Let me know if there's any doubt. How our diatomic gas molecules are having 2 degrees of freedom extra compared to monoatomic gas molecules. Because apart from translating with 3 mutually perpendicular components of velocity Vx, Vy and Vz, they can also rotate about 2 mutually perpendicular axes, the y-axis and the z-axis in this case. Because I have taken the x-axis as the axis of the molecule. So those 2 additional degrees of freedom because of rotation. Okay. Yes, you have done this in chemistry. Give it the total degrees of freedom equal to 5. In fact, what we're going to do over the next few lectures, the first law of thermodynamics and the applications of first law, many of those things will be a repeat of what you've done in chemistry. Okay. Nonetheless, the type of problems you'll be solving in physics might be a little bit different. Okay, more based on the energy calculations for thermodynamics. It will also serve as a bit of revision of the things that you learned in chemistry. Okay, so it's very imperative that you remember these two values, that for diatomic gas molecules, the total number of degrees of freedom is equal to 5. Whereas for monoatomic gases, as we saw earlier, it was 3. Alright, so let's move ahead. Now, in most of the numerical problems that we'll be doing, we'll be dealing with either monoatomic or diatomic gases. So you'll use these standard values. But when it comes to polyatomic gases or polyatomic gas molecules, okay, so the number of atoms within the molecule could be 3 and upwards. So for example, you can have methane gas, CH4, okay, or you can have ammonia gas, NH3, etc. Okay, sulfur dioxide, nitrogen dioxide, so many examples of polyatomic gas molecules. But we cannot predict directly the number of degrees of freedom just because it is polyatomic. Each type of molecule has its own shape and has its own particular features, has its own type of bond, etc. So it will depend on the particular molecule in question. So we cannot predict that just because it's a polyatomic gas molecule, that number of degrees of freedom has to be a certain fixed value. So degrees of freedom for polyatomic gas molecules can be 5, 6, 7 and upwards. Okay. For example, it can be 5 can be in the case of again 3 translational plus 2 rotational. In the case of a linear molecule, okay, with no vibration. The type of linear molecule where the interatomic bond strength is very high, so there is no question of vibration. A good example of that is carbon dioxide, CO2 gas or carbon dioxide. Because of the hybridization of carbon involved, it has this kind of a shape. Okay, and it's a linear molecule, and there's comparatively strong bond energy or comparatively large amount of bond energy between the carbon and oxygen molecules. This is the double bond. So there's hardly any vibration. But in the case of degrees of freedom being, for example, 6 or 7, etc., it can be 3 translational, 3 translational plus 2 rotational plus 1 vibrational degree of freedom, because a molecule might be vibrating about its own axis because of weak bonds, or it can be 3 translational plus 3 rotational. Okay. In the case of 7, for example, it can be 3 translational plus 3 rotational plus 1 vibrational degree of freedom, etc. Okay. So we need not bother about this at the physics problem solving level, because if we are dealing with a polyatomic gas in any particular numerical problem, then the degrees of freedom will be given to us in that particular problem. Okay, so the standard values of degrees of freedom that we have to keep in mind are only for monoatomic gas 3 and for diatomic gas 5. So that is the concept of degrees of freedom and equipartition of energy. Now from this, the next thing we will learn is the internal energy of an ideal gas. Denote with the symbol U. So again, this is based on one of the assumptions of the kinetic model that we learned earlier, that since gas molecules do not have intermolecular attractive force, Therefore, they have no potential energy. Okay. Therefore, a gas's internal energy U is nothing but the total kinetic energy of its molecules. There's simply no internal conservative force because there's no intermolecular attractive force. So there's no question of potential energy. So the only way the gas stores energy is on the basis of the kinetic energy of its molecules. So that, as we have just seen, will be number of molecules into average kinetic energy per molecule. So that will further become number of molecules into degrees of freedom into average kinetic energy per molecule. Become like this. Okay. Just make a note of this. Okay, so let's get back to this. Right, so you're talking about the internal energy of the ideal gas. So it will become number of molecules into degrees of freedom into average kinetic energy per molecule. So this is number of molecules, which we've already seen is also number of moles into Avogadro's number. Okay, multiplied with degrees of freedom. Okay, multiplied by the average kinetic energy per molecule per degree of freedom, which was half kT. Which we just now learned from equipartition of energy. Okay. So now the further thing we can understand here is in this n into k can be written as n into Avogadro's number into k. So that becomes n into universal gas constant. So we can reduce this to nf by 2 capital RT, where small n is the number of moles. Okay. So for example, 10 moles of oxygen gas at 27 degrees C The internal energy is how much? So the internal energy will become Nf by 2 RT. So F will be 5 for oxygen. Okay. And temperature we'll have to convert to Kelvin, so 300 Kelvin. So the internal energy will become 10 moles into 5 by 2 into 8.314 into 300. So this will be the answer in joules. Okay. So that will become, just calculate the value. But in the meantime, just note down this formula. Okay, so this will become 62.355 into 10 raised power 3 joules, or 62.355 kilojoules. Okay. So this is just to give you an idea of how to calculate the internal energy of an ideal gas. Okay, Aditya, I'll scroll up. For polyatomic gas molecules, you meant, right? Okay, done. Okay, so let's look at another example. Suppose we have a container which has nitrogen gas at pressure equal to, let's say, 3 atmospheres, volume equal to 1 liter, and a temperature of 300 Kelvin or normal atmospheric temperature. Okay. And take 1 atmosphere to be equal to 10 raised by 5 pascals. Okay. Or, yeah, fine, let's take it that. So we have to find, first of all, the total internal energy of the gas molecules. That is the nitrogen molecule. Secondly, we have to find RMS speed for the gas molecules. And third, we have to find average kinetic energy of a molecule. To also find average rotational kinetic energy of a molecule. So each of these quantities we have to calculate now. Just try this out. Just a minute. Yeah. Okay, so anybody got the answer for the first part? So this internal energy will be Nf by 2 RT. Now degrees of freedom will be 5 because nitrogen is a diatomic gas. And of course, so this is 5 by 2 times nRT. Now we can replace nRT as pressure into volume because number of moles is not given to us. So this becomes 5 by 2 times pressure into volume. So 5 by 2 times 3 atmospheres, which will become 3 into 10 raised power 5 pascals multiplied by the volume, which is 1 liter. Now again we'll have to convert the volume, okay, to SI unit. So 1 liter is 10 raised power minus 3 meter cube. Okay, so how do we know this conversion? 1 liter is 1000 milliliters, which is equal to 1000 cubic centimeters, because cubic centimeters is equal to milliliter. So that's 1000 into 10 raised power minus 6 meter cube. Okay, because 1 cc, which is 1 centimeter cube, is 10 raised power minus 2 whole cube, or 10 raised power minus 6 meter cube. So that's how you can see that this becomes 10 raised power minus 3 meter cube. So again, this is one important conversion to remember for this chapter. 1 liter converted to meter cube. So this becomes 1 liter is the volume. So that is 1 into 10 raised power minus 3 meter cube. So as you can see, this becomes 5 by 2 into 3 into 10 raised power 2, and pascals into meter cube will be joules, because remember Pascal is Newton per meter square. So therefore 1 Pascal meter cube is 1 Newton per meter square into meter cube. So that is Newton meter or joule. Okay, so it's very simple. So that's how much now. 15 by 2 or 7.5 into 100. So that's 750 joules. That is the total internal energy of the gas sample. So this is an important trick, that we can replace nRT with pressure into volume. Instead of using PV equal to nRT to find out number of moles and then substituting in the formula for internal energy, you can always substitute nRT directly in terms of product of pressure into volume. So time and again we'll be using this in our calculations. So make sure you're clear with this. Okay, now rest of the things are pretty direct formula based. So let's come to the second part, the RMS speed of the gas molecule. So we'll just use this formula, square root 3 RT by M. For nitrogen, what is the molecular mass, or rather what is the molar mass? Can anybody tell me? Okay, Rupesh, I'll scroll up, but what is the molar mass of nitrogen?
14.
Okay. Sure, no? Not 28?
But N2's molar mass is 28.
Yeah, N2 है ना बेटा, diatomic molecule है, right?
Yes, sir. Yes.
So 1 mole of nitrogen gas will have 2 moles of nitrogen atoms now. So it will have 2 into 14 grams, so 28 grams. And when we substitute in the formula, we will convert that to SI unit. So we convert that to kgs. Okay, Rupesh, okay. So, and the temperature is 300 Kelvin. So square root of 3 into 8.314 into 300 kelvins divided by the molar mass, which is will be 28 into 10 raised power minus 3. So this becomes square root of 9 into 8.314 by 28 into 10 raised power 5. So we can take 3 into 10 raised power 2 common outside, and we are left with square root of 83.14 divided by 28. So let's see what that gives us. 83.14 divided by 28. That's almost equal to 3. So square root of that is about 1.72. Approximately this much. So this will give us about 517, close to 517 meters per second. 516.95 meters per second. So this is the RMS speed of the nitrogen molecules. And typically for these type of gases, the RMS speed, unless we are talking about very high temperatures, they are of the range of, order of magnitude similar to speed of sound. Speed of sound is about 343 meters per second at room temperature. So similar order of magnitude. So gas molecules aren't like extremely fast particles, but they aren't very slow particles either. What I mean by saying that they are not extremely fast particles means that they are nothing like subatomic particles, the kind of velocities that are moving at, or relativistic particles, okay, nothing close to speed of light or anything like that. But then much faster than mechanical objects moving around. Okay, now let's come to the third part, the average kinetic energy per molecule. So this is more about understanding than the actual calculation. The average kinetic energy per molecule, by definition, this is F times half kT. So for nitrogen, it is 5 by 2 kT. So it is 5 by 2 into this, into 300. So I'll just leave it this way because this calculation will give us a very difficult to handle kind of value. But whereas the distinction here is the fourth one, the average rotational kinetic energy per molecule. So that will be half I omega squares average. So now this has 2 degrees of freedom because it's a diatomic molecule. The rotational kinetic energy has 2 degrees of freedom. So this will be 2 times half kT. So this will be kT. This will be 1/5 of this, or rather 2.5 times this. We'll do a rough estimate of this, but more importantly was just the fact that this is 5 by 2 times kT, whereas this will be kT. So this is the kind of kinetic energy. Okay, now with this we will move on to the next section of heat and thermodynamics, which is the first law of thermodynamics. So as I was telling you earlier, this is something familiar for you because you've studied the applications of this in chemistry also. But anyway, let's go through the basics once more. So first law of thermodynamics is a sort of a work energy relation applied to an ideal gas going through a thermodynamic process. So first of all, let us understand what is a thermodynamic process. Any process in which there is the the gas undergoes a change of state, that is the value of its pressure, volume and temperature, the state of the gas changes because of some kind of interaction with its environment, interaction in the form of heat exchange or mechanical energy exchange or mechanical work done or a combination of the both. Okay, if such a process in which mechanical energy and heat is exchanged with the gas, and as a result of that the gas's state changes, then it is called a thermodynamic process. Okay, so it is a process whereby the state of a gas, or in this case an ideal gas, so by the state we mean its pressure, volume and temperature, okay, is changed due to the exchange of heat and or mechanical work. It is the same work done that you studied in physics earlier in work by energy with its environment or some external agent. So that is a thermodynamic process. So a thermodynamic process can be represented by a PV curve. So such a process can be represented by a curve on a PV graph. So any particular point on the PV graph represents a particular state of an ideal gas. So we draw a graph where the vertical axis is the pressure, the horizontal axis is volume. Then at any particular point, let's say A, we have a particular pressure, we have a particular volume, but because of this equation PAVA is equal to nRTA, we have a particular temperature defined also. So therefore, a point E on the PV graph represents a particular state, that is pressure equal to PA, volume equal to VA, and temperature equal to TA for n moles of a given ideal gas. Okay. So now like this, if we are going from state A to state B through some kind of a path, then this curve, it represents a thermodynamic process from state A to state B. For that particular ideal gas. Okay. So just write down this definition of thermodynamic process first, then we will see the actual statement of the first law of thermodynamics. Okay. So next up, we'll see the statement of the first law. That during a process of state change, the heat supplied to the gas plus the work done on the gas is equal to the change in its internal energy. Or we can also write it in this way, that the heat supplied to the gas is equal to the change in internal energy plus work done by the gas. So in this, Q is equal to heat supplied to the gas, obviously during the thermodynamic process. Delta U is the change in internal energy. But W, if I say on the gas, this is equal to the work done on the gas. And this will be a positive quantity when the gas is compressed. Okay, whereas it will be negative when the gas expands. Whereas if I write it in the second form which I've shown over here, that Q is equal to delta U plus W by the gas. So this is the work done by the gas. So this quantity is positive when the gas expands. So we'll understand this in more detail next, okay? Whereas this is negative when the gas is compressed. Okay, so let's understand this work done on the gas versus work done by the gas concept a little more carefully. So for example, if we are having a process where what is happening is there is some gas here in a chamber and there is a piston and the piston is being pushed inwards like this. Okay, then what is happening is that the force supplied by some external agent, whereas the force applied by the gas, which will be pressure into area. P is the pressure of the gas, A is the area of the piston. Now, in case of compression, the volume is compressed. So the piston is pushed downwards. So you can see that the work done on the gas, that will be FDS. where ds is in this direction, so it will be positive. Whereas the work done by the gas, it will be negative of the force that the gas is applying into ds. So it will be a negative quantity because this force is doing negative work. The force applied by the gas is doing negative work. So okay. Whereas if we look at the same thing in a situation where now this is moving in the opposite direction, suppose we see the gas is ex expanding. So the volume is increasing. So the piston being pushed up. So work done on the gas in this case will be the work done by F. So that will become minus F ds integration. So that will be a negative quantity. Whereas work done by the gas will be positive of pressure into area into ds. So that will be the positive quantity. And we can see that A into ds is nothing but the change in volume. So work done by the gas in general is defined as integration PD. So it becomes positive when dV is positive, that is expansion is taking place, and it becomes negative when dV is negative, that means compression is taking place. This is how we define in terms of pressure and volume the work done by the gas. Okay, so just make a note of this and we will conclude today's lecture here. Next time we'll pick it up from the statement of first law again, and we'll understand the other two terms Q and delta U in it, that is heat supplied to the gas and the change in internal energy. And then we'll look at the applications of first law in the various standard processes first, which you've already seen in chemistry before also, isothermal, adiabatic, isochoric, and isobaric, and then moving on to the more general type of processes, polytropic process, etc. So quite a bit of it will be repetition of what you've seen in chemistry before. Okay. So anyhow, that's it for today's session. People, wish you all the best, and thanks for attending.
Yes, sir. Bye.
Okay, bye, people.